Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Entrepreneurial Mindset. How do entrepreneurs think? Actually, do entrepreneurs think differently than other people? First of all, we've seen that entrepreneurs have, to some extent, the same entrepreneurial mindset, same personality, and it is a lot about what they've learned throughout their life. Now, what is really entrepreneurial in an entrepreneur's mindset? How do entrepreneurs think? And this is exactly the question Sarah Saraswati, a professor in Darden in Virginia, asked herself when she started her PhD thesis. She asked herself the question, is there a difference between expert entrepreneurs versus non-expert entrepreneurs as concerns how they will deal with risk and return in highly uncertain situations? So she wanted to know if expert entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs who were successful serial entrepreneurs, had a different way of thinking and at the very end acting too, compared to regular business people, for example. What she did is she took 27 expert entrepreneurs and conducted a think aloud experience. So she asked them specific questions to situations with high uncertainty and tried to understand whether they have different thinking to compare to a control group of non-expert entrepreneurs. And the challenge then is really to pick your partners and package yourself early on before you have to put a lot of capital out. Was a typical quote you heard from entrepreneurs. And it's interesting because these entrepreneurs say, don't invest at the very beginning. Try to learn first of all, pick partners, for example. This is just one quote, but this one quote showed her that there's a difference between entrepreneurs' mindset and business people's mindset. And this is the entrepreneurial mindset, which I'd like to show you in the next slides. So first of all, she found out that all non-entrepreneurs, they have and they follow a very established decision-making process, which starts defining goals and then looking at expected returns and all sorts of things. This is what you typically learn at business schools. However, if you look at expert entrepreneurs on the other hand, and compare it to this established decision-making process, you will see that they start on a different point, they assess means, and they have different process. So in general, it's a different approach. And that's the entrepreneur's mindset. So if you would like to answer that question, you can say, yes, expert entrepreneurs have a different mindset than non-entrepreneurs. There is an entrepreneurial mindset. So what is this mindset first of all about? Well, let's start with the different process and then go deeper into more elements of this process. What is the difference in the process? Start with the non-entrepreneurs. If you are a regular businessman, and if someone asks you to do a business plan or to derive next year's plan and do all sorts of things, what do? First of all, you think about what you would like to achieve. So you define the goal. That's the first thing you do. Secondly, then, you think about which are the resources necessary to go for that goal. So you do the decision based on goals, especially about resources and about the process. So what's the process and the resources? That's the second thing you do. And the third thing you do is you define those resources in order to be able to execute that plan and reach the goal. So if you think about that and you look at that from an input to output perspective, you always start in an established process with the output, and then you think about how to approach the output, what could be the right process, and then you define the resources. And this process is really worth to be undertaken in very, very stable environments. However, since those entrepreneurial environments are more unstable, expert entrepreneurs seem to do it differently. They start with their own resources. They start defining their own resources, which could be comparably low resources, which might not be a lot they want to invest. And thus, they don't go big risks. So they define the resources, and then they decide based on their resources, and then they create the best possible output. So what they do is they start at the opposite compared to non-entrepreneurs. They start with the input first, so they think about themselves and what they can do. Then they try to get to the next step, and this is what they achieve at the very end. They even do not try to predict the output, because in most circumstances this is not possible. They just get to that place. However, it is more, it is being in control with this process, and this is what Sarah's elaborated a lot more in all of her books, and in the following chapters we'd like to show how to fill that process really with a lot more content. First of all, entrepreneurs have very different mindset compared to non-entrepreneurs, and this is the result of this mindset. This is the process they undertake, and now it's worth looking deeper into that process.